Hello everybody, I'm Chef Ricardo from Wellness in the Schools. Wellness in the Schools teaches kids healthy habits to learn, live, and thrive. In particular, I'm both a registered dietitian nutritionist for Wellness in the Schools and a school nutrition specialist as well too. And we work in the Camden City School District as part of the Full Futures Initiative, which is a collective working to improve school nutrition. In particular, we collaborate with the Camden City School District School Nutrition Team and the food purveyor for the district to help improve school lunch and to get the student voice involved in the selection of recipes for school lunch. The school nutrition team has requested that I demonstrate how to prepare a holiday turkey in both a safe and healthy manner. So here in front of me I have a 9-pound turkey. My turkey has been thawed out and we're going to work on preparing this. However, first things first, food safety is the cornerstone of every meal. In order to have a healthy meal, you have to have a safe meal. So in order to prepare to work with this turkey, I have to move on over to my kitchen sink and prepare my kitchen sink for the next step. My first step in making sure that I have a clean kitchen and clean working space is to go ahead and sanitize my sink. I'll be cleaning my turkey within the sink, so I want to make sure that the surface I'm working with is already clean. My first step to do is to just use a little bit of this power degreaser and washer to just sanitize the sink down. You can also do this with bleach if you don't have a specialty product as well. The difference between cleaning and disinfecting here is that when I'm cleaning the surface, I'm removing any visible dirt. However, there could still be bacteria that could be potentially harmful, so I want to make sure that I'm properly disinfecting in order to remove all of that bacteria. At this stage, I've given my cleanser at least 15 seconds to just permeate the surface to kill any germs. I'm going to go ahead and wipe down my surface. Now I'm just going to rinse my surface. At this point I have a properly sanitized sink, which is very important because we're going to go ahead and clean our turkey in the sink. The USDA would recommend that poultry not be cleaned before it's going to be cooked because that would be sanitized through the act of heating the turkey or chicken to cook the bacteria off. However, we understand that sometimes, depending on how the turkeys are processed, you'll find that there may be bones or a little bit of feathers, especially if you're working with chicken parts or turkey parts instead of a whole piece of poultry, instead of the whole bird. I have a bowl here for my 9-pound turkey. I'm going to put that at the bottom of my sink. And now I can go ahead and open up my turkey. And I just want to make sure that this is able to drain properly, drain out any of the liquid. And I'm going to slowly remove my bird into the bag. This is a step that you could choose to utilize gloves for. You may particularly want to do that if you're cooking for anyone who may be elderly or immune compromised. Our turkey here actually has a meat thermometer in it. We'll talk more about food safety when it comes to thermometers, but we'll leave that for just the current moment right now. And I am going to just put some running water onto my turkey. And at this point, I just want to give the turkey a bath. I want to fill this bowl up with water. Rather than splash water onto my turkey, I want to just gently swish around my bird under this bath. I'm going to turn my bird around, and the bird is still trussed. I'm going to leave that binding in place because that's going to help when cooking. However, I am going to reach into the main cavity here to get out any of the gizzards, say like the neck or heart of our turkey. This we can definitely put it on the side. This is the neck right here. We can definitely reserve this for making a homemade gravy. So I will put that on the side, reach in a little bit more. Here I've got the liver of the turkey, another thing that will be really good for homemade gravy. And I think that's about everything within the turkey. All right, this is perfect. At this point, I'm gonna go and rinse out my turkey one more time so we can transition to getting it seasoned for a dry brine. In order to make sure that our seasoning will properly adhere, I'm just gonna pat my turkey dry right now. I'm going to take the wingtip and I'm going to force this behind the back of the bird. At least that way we can properly brown the bird's wings. A little bit stubborn, but there we go. And I'll move my bird over to my sheet pan. So I've got my clean turkey right in front of me. If your turkey doesn't come trussed, you definitely want to take a little bit of twine and truss the legs. You can also choose to truss the wings as well too. That'll help to hold it down a little bit better while it's cooking. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to move ahead to preparing my seasoning blend. So what we're going to do is prepare a seasoning blend of just a couple simple dried herbs. And I'm going to use 1 tablespoon of the following. Here I've got some dried thyme. The next herb that I'm going to add will be dried oregano, all into the same container. Afterwards, I will add a little bit of dried sage. The sage is ground, it's not sage leaves. If you don't have any of these seasonings at home, it's not the end of the world. Also, you may choose to make your own seasoning blend at home to give your turkey a more traditional flavor. And then some onion powder. Garlic also would not be out of place here. I'll mix up my seasoning blends to make sure that they're evenly distributed within this mixture. And I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of my seasoning and reserve it on the side. We'll use that right now when we're seasoning our bird, because we're going to get our bird set up to be brined. And when you're brining a turkey, there are really 2 ways that you can do it. You could choose to use a wet brine, where you're actually taking the bird and putting it in a saltwater solution, letting it sit completely submerged. Generally, you want to wet brine a turkey for up to 24 hours. The quicker way of brining is to do a dry brine, and that's what I'll demonstrate right here. My first step is to take my turkey and put it in a brining bag. This bag is just meant to go in the refrigerator. This is not a cooking bag. This is not a food safe bag. So we are going to dispose of this once we finish brining the turkey. This is for like an extra large turkey size. It'll do the job just right for us. This is actually going to help me to capture the seasonings as I'm putting them in. So in order to properly season the bird, because we're not adding in a liquid solution, I've got some coarse sea salt here. We want to go with coarse for the texture, and I'll add that in just a moment. But I'm going to take my reserve seasoning blend, and I'm just going to rub this. I'm just going to pat this onto the skin and inside the main cavity as well too. We're going to have to rinse this out in the end to get off that extra salt, but this is going to help to start the flavoring process. So I'll sprinkle a little bit right on top. And with the hand that is already dirty, I'm just going to pat this down onto the sides. Last but not least, I'm going to take my salt and I'm going to season just on the outside. So I'll sprinkle it right on top. You could season liberally with this because it is not going to become part of our final seasoning blend, except for what portion of the salt is sucked into the skin. The salt is going to be absorbed by the skin of the turkey, and what the salt really allows us to do, whether it's in a dry brine or a wet brine, is to help pull out the moisture from the bird. And that'll help to start making the turkey meat very tender. If you're using gloves, you want to make sure that you're changing them liberally. At least this way, you are changing them every single time you touch the raw poultry, because you don't want to cross-contaminate your workstation, particularly your cutting board, especially if you're going to move on to work with raw produce after the fact. And we're going to let this sit in the refrigerator for 4 to 6 hours before our next step. 4 hours have passed. I've allowed my turkey to dry brine in the refrigerator. It's currently out right now. I've reset my kitchen sink here. I've got my bowl in the sink. And what I'm going to do is just take this turkey and rinse it. So once again, if you have gloves, you can put that on at this point. But what I really want to do is just rinse the exterior of the chicken. I don't want to rinse the inside of the cavity. Whatever salt remains will actually become part of our seasoning. But I want to just wash off the excess salt from the outside. It always helps to have everything set in place. That's our mise en place. And so while I had my turkey dry brining, I've set up an oven-safe pan to cook my turkey in. At this point, I'm just going to wash my hands before I move to the next step. So to prepare my seasoning for the turkey at this point, I'm going to take the remaining seasoning blend that I have. Off camera, I went ahead and added a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, just being mindful of the fact that there's already salt within the turkey as well. It's been absorbed during the dry brining process. I have extra virgin olive oil, and I'm gonna just measure out 1/3 of a cup worth of oil. And what I'm going to do is take this oil and make a paste with my seasoning blend here. So I'm just going to slowly mix in. You just want a slurry-like consistency. You want to make sure that it's evenly mixed so there are no pockets of dry spice seasoning. At this point, I'm going to take a tablespoon's worth, and I have to get hands-on with my turkey once again. I'm going to pour about a tablespoon's worth straight into the cavity. Actually, stick my hand into the cavity to just make sure that that's evenly covered around. Some people also may choose to put in fresh herbs as well. You may certainly put in some poultry blend seasoning, so some sage, some thyme, some rosemary. If you don't have that and you only have access to the dried herbs, that works perfectly fine too. Just always being mindful, dried herbs are going to be stronger than fresh herbs. I'm going to take the remaining herb blend that I have here, seasoning blend, and cover my turkey. So I'm going to go on top. I'll just drizzle a little bit here, making sure to cover every part of the bird nice and evenly. And I want to make sure that the back is covered too. So I'll turn my bird around, let the strip across. And it's okay if some falls into the pan itself and gets stuck on the bottom, because it is just going to be reincorporated into the bird once we start cooking it. And to wash one more time, and I've made sure that the bird is properly seasoned. I actually did lift up the skin right under here to get a little extra seasoning underneath. I wanted to hit it with some extra flavors, so I added in a little bit of black pepper, I added in a little bit of garlic. If you have like a lemon pepper blend, that's not out of place in this recipe. So at this point, I have about a ½ cup's worth of chicken broth here, and I'm just gonna pour this straight into the bottom. When we start to cook our turkey, we want to brown our turkey first. So if you look at any recommendations for cooking temperatures and times, you'll see that most recommendations based off of the USDA call for the turkey to be cooked at 325 degrees. However, if you decide to brown your turkey to make the skin nice and crispy, you want to best prepare this at a higher temperature at first and then back your temperature down. The reason being that if you cook the turkey at 325 until it's just about done and then try to brown it, you could overcook it. Your turkey could get drier. The texture is going to be affected, definitely. So I've got my oven set for 425 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're using a convection oven, just be mindful that it has a fan. You can put it in the center of the oven. And if you're using a conventional oven, you may have to crank up the temperature a little bit more. Be mindful of the hot spots in your own individual oven. And we're going to let it cook at 425 degrees for 30 minutes. And I'll take a look at it and back it down to 325. For this 9-pound bird, I want to let this turkey cook for about 2.5 to 3 hours, but we will go ahead and temperature check it. On the note of checking temperatures, not necessarily relying on this thermometer that was provided with the turkey. I'm going to use my own thermometer and make sure that it's properly calibrated. Look to the end of this video and we'll have a short guide on that, although I highly recommend watching somebody do this in real time on YouTube. But I'll go ahead, put my bird in. We'll let this sit for about 30 minutes before I back down on the temperature, and then let this cook for the next 3 hours until our bird reads at 165 degrees Fahrenheit. You could see what the 35 to 40 minutes of browning did to the outside. Once we finished browning, we covered it over with a little tent of aluminum foil. And right now, it looks like it's just about done, but I want to go ahead and baste it to get some of those juices into the muscle meat. So I'm going to take about a 3/4 of an ounce of the juice, and while I may not use it all, I just want to go ahead and inject that into the skin. And I'm just going to do this slowly at an angle, not too far in, and just push in a little bit. I'll go ahead and do that on this side, just right up on the side of the breast, just a little bit there. And then on the opposite side, I also want to get that thigh as well too. At this point, I'm going to take my remaining leftover and just drizzle that right over. This looks just about done. I'm going to take the temperature of my turkey. So regardless of whether you're using digital or analog, you want to go ahead and insert it to about 2 inches deep. Most thermometers should have a dimple that'll indicate about how deep the thermometer has to be plunged in. And so I'll plunge that in a little bit. You want to stick it in the thickest part. And right here, I've chosen to do that in the breast. You could also do that in the thigh as well too. Oh yeah, this is reading at 158 degrees. And that's going to be a sign to me that this only needs maybe about 10 minutes more or so to finish up. So at this point, I'll leave it uncovered. Since I've used it, I have to sanitize my thermometer before reapplying it inside. But I'm going to go ahead and find my oven mitts and put this right into the oven. The other way, some other thermometers you may see in the store, especially around the holiday season, will have the different varieties and cuts of meat indicated on them. So there's one where you can find one temperature of each doneness for each piece of meat, whether that be veal, pork, lamb, or in this case, turkey. If you're using a regular thermometer like I have right here, what you want to make sure is that your turkey reaches 165 degrees. When you're working with poultry, say like chicken or turkey, that is the minimum safe temperature that you need to reach to make sure that all bacteria in the poultry have been killed off and that the bird is suitable to eat. At this point, I can smell that turkey is really, really aromatic. I think that's basically just about done, even though there's about a minute or so left on the clock. So I'll go ahead and pull that out. I don't always go by the thermometer, but it has popped out. So at least by its own internal metric, it's reached 165 degrees. I need to find where I place my thermometer to go ahead and test that. And taking a look at that, we've hit 165 degrees. So I'll go ahead and pull that out. We're at temperature, and we're gonna let this rest for a couple of minutes under a bit of foil to just let the meat evenly distribute its heat. We'll just put that right over on the range so it's out of our way. Now that our turkey is finished, it's had an opportunity to cool down, I can go ahead and carve the turkey. My first move will be to just cut the twine that was used to truss the turkey. If you had twine to truss the wings, you can also take that off at this point as well. I'll put that in our waste bowl. The next thing I want to do is taking my knife, I'm going to cut straight down to cut out the legs on each side. So I'll cut straight through. And so at this point, if you can't slip the tip of the knife into the joint, you could just be intentional about pulling back and just taking the leg off completely. I'll just turn the bird around, and I'll do the same right over here. And we've got our drumsticks off. If you're finding that you can't cut all the way through with your knife, you can also just use the shears to cut through the bone. I'm just cutting this in half. Essentially because we, in our home, don't necessarily eat a lot of turkey, so I'll just cut one half of the bird and carve out one half of the breast at a time. Moving on down, I basically want to cut the bird in half. So using the kitchen shears, I'm going to cut all the way down up to the neck area and then work my way over to the back. All right, I think I've cut right through the wishbone. So at this point, I can go ahead and turn this around. This is going to come apart. And rather than trying to force this apart or split this apart, at this point, you could see the spine right down the middle. You should not try to cut straight through the spine. The bones are going to be hard. Rather, you want to cut just off center to either side to just cut through those rib bones. And I'll just get my knife through here. And alternatively, you can use the kitchen shears as well too. I may opt for that. It gives me a little better leverage at this point to just work my way straight through the bird. And I'm gonna cut basically from head to tail. And I'll bring this a little bit closer. And there we go. We've cut our bird in half. To give you a better view of how I'm gonna carve the breast, I've turned the bird on its side, so you have the breast right over here, wings over here, we still have our thigh there. And just taking my knife, I'm gonna cut into the bird and cut 1/2-inch slices of the breast.
but you want to go ahead and cut at an angle because you know that the breastbone is still there, it's still present. And at this point, I'm going to take my turkey slices, place them on the platter, and just because of the angle and my thigh bone right here, I'm going to break down the turkey a little differently. All right, so here's a finished product. Admittedly, as I was working through it, I found it a little bit harder to work with. It was a smaller bird, it was leaner, I was cutting to the bone a little quicker, but here are all the products I've got from it. I've got my 2 drumsticks right here, I've got the butt of the turkey here, a little bit of the white meat from the breast over here, the dark meat from the thigh right over here, a wing, and I have another whole half of the turkey. My family doesn't eat a lot of turkey at once, so this is really 2 meals at once right there. Thanks again for tuning in.